Hi, everybody. I'm Thad Peterson. I'm with Aite Group. I hope everybody's having a good day. It's great to be part of Fintech South, and it's very cool to see how the Southeast has become an epicenter for Fintech. I'm really happy to be here with Kush Saxena, Executive Vice President for Merchants and Acceptance for MasterCard. In that role, he drives global merchant initiatives for acquiring merchant segments and business development for co-brands, commercial, government, healthcare, transit, and other verticals in the U.S. market. Kush, welcome.
Thank you, Tad, and happy to be here.
You know, to quote the Grateful Dead, what a long, strange trip it's been over the past several months. The pandemic has impacted nearly every aspect of our lives, and the world of commerce has morphed from two major venues, online and face to face, to a hybrid of commerce, including everything from buy online and pick up in store, buy online, pick up out of the store, order ahead, and touch free commerce, including payment with QR codes. There's been a whole lot of change, and it looks like a lot of that change is going to stick around after the pandemic. So, Kush, what do you see as the most impactful changes to the payment ecosystem from the pandemic?
Thanks, Tad. Look, I've done a few of these virtual events. None of them has started with a quote from the Grateful Dead, so I really do appreciate that. But look, I think the payment ecosystem has been forward-looking and innovating for years, anticipating a whole range of needs around retail digitization and merchant digitization and consumer omni-channel migration and so on and so forth, all of which have gotten really amplified and sort of accelerated through COVID. So at some level, some of the most impactful changes that we're seeing occur in the payment ecosystem from the pandemic right now are ones that the industry has been preparing for, along with a lot of our partners actually in the Southeast for years. And before we talk about what those are, I just want to recognize that, right? This is the reason from a commerce standpoint and an ecosystem standpoint, life has continued to go on despite the disruption of the pandemic is owing largely to the innovations and the investments the payments ecosystem has put in place over the last many years. Mm-hmm. If you think about what those changes are, look, I think we're seeing a sharp uptick in what I would call everything touchless, most notably contactless in terms of point of sale growth. We are seeing very, very high growth in contactless transactions at point of sale. We're seeing a sharp increase in move to digital commerce and omni-channel commerce. All of that from a payment ecosystem standpoint is being enabled by investments we've collectively made in tokenization and in security-based capabilities like two-factor authentication and new innovations that are beginning to see a lot of traction around click to pay, which are an industry standard solution for guest checkouts, or MDES for merchants, which is MasterCard's solution for repeat transactions in a digital environment or card and file environment. So I think the drive towards touchless and the drive towards token-driven digital payment solutions is probably the biggest, most pronounced change that we are seeing happen today. And again, I'll reiterate, these may be new or may feel new as a result of the pandemic, but they are largely, they've worked well and they've done so on the back of investments we've all collectively made over the last many, many years.
You're right. The payments ecosystem has been way ahead of consumers for several years. Right. You look at the 15 years we waited for mobile wallets to show up, and the time that it took to get EMV in place and everything else. You're right. We were kind of in a great position for this to happen, frankly. And now it appears kind of like the consumer behavior is catching up with where we were.
That's right.
Have you seen any significant changes in what's going on in payments in other markets around the world versus the U.S.?
Look, I think the variations across markets are a function of two factors. They're a function of how commerce is different in those markets versus what we might be seeing in the US. And then the second driver of variation is how the payments ecosystem within that commerce environment is different in some of those markets, right? So if you think about markets like some of the large Asian markets like China or India or Southeast Asia, small ticket commerce in those markets kind of leapfrogged from physical to omni-channel. Yes, there was a small sliver of the economy in those markets that remained digital only, or that grew up as a digital only. but the notions of online to offline commerce or omni-channel commerce or digitization of small local equivalents of bodega stores and so on and so forth in markets like Southeast Asia, China, India, so on and so forth, had already occurred. And you're seeing now, a like the equivalent of buy online, pick up in store, which might feel new here in the US, for example. Variations of those have already accelerated in those markets, right?
Mhm.
If you think about Latin America or Middle East Africa, what you're seeing is that leapfrogging towards omni-channel commerce occurring. So I think those markets lagged some of the Asian markets by a few years. We are seeing the adoption of that omni-channel trend happening right now as we speak, based on investments large market participants are putting in place right now. But look, while these may be different uh, commerce modalities in these markets, the
Mhm.
underlying foundations of the payments ecosystem, whether it's trust-based technologies, token-based technologies, the four-party ecosystem, all of those remain the same. So I'd say it's a little bit of both. I think there's some variations you're seeing, but the foundations remain largely similar.
So continuing on the international theme, there was huge disruption in supply chain that happened because of
Mhm.
this thing, and clearly cross-border commerce took a big downturn. But going forward, how do you see the impact of the pandemic on cross-border commerce? Do you think it's going to be a major downturn for a while, or do you think it'll come back up fairly quickly?
Look, I think you'll see a tale of two cities. I was going to say, but actually, I think you're going to see quite a bit of diversity in how cross-border plays out. I think consumer travel from a cross-border standpoint, consumer and recreational travel from a cross-border standpoint is going to. I think that's going to take a while before it comes
Yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah.
Again, there's no way for me to know for sure, but every indication we see, conversations we are having with large travel merchants, with travel associations, tells us consumer travel and particularly corporate cross-border travel, that is what we call inter-region, is going to take a hit. I think consumer travel intra-region, right? So within a Europe, within parts of Southeast Asia, I think we'll all see that revert faster. And in fact, in Europe, we've already seen that happen through the summer, for example, right?
Mm.
So I think corporate and consumer will behave differently, and inter-region and intra-region will behave differently. And then look, as you think about trade and you think about B2B transactions and you think about wholesale transactions, uh, I think the jury is a little bit out there, and it depends a little bit on the political realignments we'll see in the ecosystem, right? So uh, the I can see a world where there are new relationships being forged. I think you'll see the U.S.-China dynamic play out there a little bit,
Mhm.
where China is being very influential with a whole range of emerging markets in Africa, Latin America, parts of Southeast Asia, and you might see within those clusters a lot of activity around trade and wholesale commerce. I think U.S. and Western Europe have had sort of puts and takes. You might see those ties get stronger. There's talk of a completely renewed sort of NAFTA agreement, so that
Mhm.
will drive. So I think on the trade side, you're going to see a rewiring of relationships. But how exactly that plays out, I think the jury is a little bit out there, and a lot of it actually depends on political outcomes that will play out over the next few weeks and months.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, and I appreciate your comments about business travel. We were talking about that just before we got on here about how
Right.
desperately we want to get on planes, and we can't see the audience, but I'd love to see a virtual show of hands about how many of you just really want to get on a plane and go someplace right now. Um,
Yeah.
so, with the change in what's going on, card not present transactions have clearly shot through the roof, and digital commerce is what's going on, and fraud has certainly increased with that. Um, how do you think the migration to digital commerce in this new world that we're going to be living in will impact the trust that people have in the payments ecosystem?
Look, I think consumer trust is going to be tested, and I think we're going to see a little bit of the evolution of the hype cycle that we'd see on any the consumer adoption of any new product play out, which is, hey, guess what? It's so easy. I want to transact with a particular type of merchant. I don't want to go in the store and partake in what is a traditional or a normal consumer journey. I want to do that on the back of a new, revised, modified consumer experience and journey powered by this app that I see. And lo and behold, how easy is it for me to transact on this app because of the investments the payments ecosystem players have made? All right, I'm going to lean into that, right? You might see strong adoption and excitement of that type by consumers in the early days. I think we'll see at the same time, you and I both know that bad actors innovate at the same rate. Technology is just a tool. Bad actors use it and good actors use it, and the bad actors could easily use it to compromise these new technologies. So I suspect we'll see some compromises. I think that will erode consumer trust. And I think you'll see the consumer beg and ask for, all right, how do I trust these new ways of engaging in commerce? And so I think consumer trust is going to go through that hype cycle. It's going to get tested, right? And look, I think the payments ecosystem needs to do what the payments ecosystem has done well, which is stay ahead of these risks and stay ahead of the consumer. And look, I think digital identity solutions that are privacy first, that preserve privacy, that get rid of passwords, that tie themselves to strong credentials, that are backed by strong KYC processes, and powered by the ability to move credentials safely and securely with, again, our privacy first outlook across the ecosystem, are the types of solutions that will have to evolve. And I think as that happens, you'll see some of that consumer trust rebuilt again.
Do you think things like secure customer authentication in Europe are going to have a significant impact on consumer trust?
I think they will be those types of regulations and the technologies powered by those types of policies is what will, I think, sustain consumer trust over the long term, right? So you think about secure customer authentication, absolutely. You think about how that interacts with GDPR in Europe, which is then driving a privacy paradigm. I've always said the combination of SCA and GDPR lead you to sort of the ideal answer, which is privacy first digital identity. Those are enablers for those kinds of solutions.
Yep. It's going to be an interesting transition to see where we go from here. And I see, as you do, there's an opportunity here to actually increase trust as the tools start to come into place to make that stuff happen.
That's right.
I think there's a real opportunity for that. We have time for, I think, one last question. That is, looking out 3 to 5 years from now, what do you think the impact of everything that's happened to us in the last 6 months is going to have on the payments ecosystem?
Yeah. Look, I think we have to interact. We have to look at the interaction of what's happened to us in the last 6 months with the rise of new technologies and a lot of the other trends that were underway. Like I said, so merchants and consumers going omni-channel has been happening for a while. The investments in 5G and what that does to the connectivity infrastructure, and as a result, the role of devices is going to be huge. You've got a lot more intelligence in consumer journeys and data explosion that's going to occur as a result of digitization of these consumer journeys in a retail environment and even online. That's going to be critical. Virtual experiences like we're having one right now, that's a change, right? So look, I think you're going to see a lot of rewiring. Excuse me, you're going to see a lot of rewiring of that consumer journey and experience. I think the payments ecosystem is going to have to do what it actually does pretty well, which is keep the foundation steady and standards driven and really safe, secure, and private, but then make it really easy to tap into those and drive a lot of flexibility from an access standpoint, whether that access is coming from a device or from a phone or using a payment method that's a non-bank driven payment method or a bank driven payment method. I think that flexibility on access to what are strict, secure foundations is what the payments ecosystem is going to have to do.
Great answer, Kush. Thanks so much for your time. I really enjoyed the conversation. Best wishes to you and your family, and I hope to talk again with you soon.
To you as well, Thad, and thank you for the dialogue.
Take care.
Take care.